Thank you. Omer le Rav Kahana. Yesterday we were discussing somebody who distributed his assets to his two daughters and to his wife. We already learned that when she gets a chelik in the land, she is moichel the shibud. But the situation was such that one of the two girls, Rahman al-Islam, died. The father yarshed her back, so now he reacquired that piece of property. Will there be a shibud on that property? Rav Kahana said it's no different than if he bought it back. Just like any new asset that he buys. Avad is a shibud ksubanid. So too, if he yarshed his daughter's chelik, there's also going to be a shibud ksu. Hahu de pelginu lenichse laach leitzei ulavnei. He distributed all his assets, and his wife got a chelik. Again, that's where we all say, everybody agrees there, that she has relinquished her shibud on the rest of the property that she didn't get. But there was one dekel that was not distributed. So Ravina Lememar Leslo Ela Chadikla. Ravina thought that she was talking moichel the shibud on everything, except for that chadikla, that one dekel that was there the shibud remains. Omar lei Rabbi Emil Ravina, I leslo chad dikla. I'm sorry, I leslo chad dikla nami leslo. If you hold that she's not entitled to a shibud on the other properties that were given to the children, then she doesn't have a dikla either, because she either gave up her schus shibud on the current nechasim of her husband, or she didn't. So lesla, if you're going to claim that she doesn't have a shibud on the nechasim that went to the boys, well then chadikla nami lesla. So she doesn't have a shibud there, and of course that's not halacha, because there's no reason to assume that she gave up her right to the shibud on the dekel that was not distributed. So therefore, elamigu de nachsa ladikla nachsa nami lakulu nechsi. Since she retains her shibud on the dekel, so too she retains her shibud on that of all the boys. And the Rishbam explains the lumdus. It's similar to what we learned yesterday by Abari. By Abari, the fact that she's quiet and doesn't protest when this is done, when her sons are given all of the nechosim, doesn't prove that she is being moided, doesn't prove that she's being agreeable to give up her shibud. You know why? Because her cheshbon is, my husband will buy stuff later on. Well, who adin? If there's a dekel there, she's not. She's not screaming because there's something there, and therefore it's a symbol that she did not maskim to relinquish her shibud. Okay, gewaltig. As the Rishbam speaks out over here, the Hai Deshoska, V'lo Irara. Why did she not protest? Hainu lefi shahaya manich lahadeka. The sovereign, she thinks to herself, Lama ar achshav. Why would I start complaining now? Ad sheyeshumu bezin hadekel. Vatrefenu, once bezin determines its value, and I take it, v'hader ar alabanim. Then, when I see I still need more nechosim to collect from, then I could protest. Her shtika is in fact not a mechila. Amrafun Shrivera shekosov kol nechosov la'achar. A Shrivera that wrote over all of his nechosim to a third party. So the question is, this is working with Taras Matna Shrivera. Now the question is this working with Taras Matana, or is this working with Taras Yerusha? Ryan, we check out this Shchimera. I'm sorry, we check out this recipient. In royal Yarshay, if anyway he was in line to Yarshin, the giver, the Metzaveh, Noitla Mishum Yerusha. We will default it to a Yerusha working with the principle of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, who says that if you say I wanted to go to one of the Yarshim, it works with Torah Yerusha. But V'im Lav, if he's not royally Yarshay, then Noitla Mishum Atan. So the Rashbam explains, you just says I want all my nechosim to go to Pliny. You didn't clarify, do I mean B'Taras Matana, or do I mean B'Taras Yerusha? Zok Rav Huna, a person will always want it to go with the simplest way. We know the Matna Shchivmar is Keksub Mechsum Dami Midirabona, but the Yerusha, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka, works Midaraisa, and therefore we say he meant to do it the Yerusha. As the Rashbam says, the Kivan the Royal Yarshay, since this person was anyway in line to Yarshin him, he probably meant to transmit it to the recipient, B'Yerusha not b'matana. He never mentioned matana. He says nichse leploini. He didn't say matana. So pastors, it's working with Torah Yerusha because he's not creating a din matana. Aval gaba Yerusha ain't tzarich lefar. You don't have to explain how it's going to go. The Mamela Kayaris, because according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka, if you just say I want to go to him, it works with Torah Yerusha. So if it's matana, you're actually doing the transaction. That might require a little bit more clarification. But if it's Yerusha, it doesn't need clarification. You just need to say who you're going to. And Yerusha takes care of the rest. The Tavsum in the Torah, if you could say that this transaction is working with the mechanism of Yerusha, which is the Raisa the Kakinyan, he'd rather it work with the Deraisa transmission mechanism. So, Frek the Gemara, look at that. Dr. Rav Nachman told Ravuna, you're saying this as if it's your own chiddush. Gan v'genuv lamalach. If your whole chiddush is like Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka, that Yerusha works, if you just specify I want all the Yerusha to go to one of the potential Yerusha, so say you hold like Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka. Don't make believe that this is your own shtickle Torah. Yisfir lach Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka, ema lach Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka. Dashmaitzech ki Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka who does. Clearly, your chiddush basically is repeating the chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka. Rabbi Nachman said, you know, maybe you weren't even trying to talk about Allah of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka. Maybe you were trying to bring out a completely different point. Yes, Agav Orcha, it does involve the mechanism of Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka, but that wasn't the focus of what you were trying to express. Rather, Dilma Kiha Ka'amr. Maybe this is what you were referring to. The Ahu, and there was a case that you passed in this based on the Ahu Dahava Koshachim. There was someone who was dying, and he did not say who he wants his nechasim to go to, but they approached him. His friendly Moshe approached him. Mistoma willst du geben dein ganze Vermögen zu uns. You probably want to give it all to us. So they told him he was dying, and they told him nichse leman. Who should your nechasim go to? Dimel Aplanya. Maybe it should go to Yankel. In other words, someone suggested to him that his nechasim should go to a certain person. V'amarlu, and he answered back, El leman. Who else should it go to? So that was a conversation. Some third party says, Abshis also lost down Famegen to Yankel, and he says, and who else should I leave it to? So the question is, V'amrit lo Allah, and on that you pass him. In Royal Yarshay, if that leman, if that fellow that you were referring to is Royal Yarshay, Noitlan Mishom Yerusha, get up at Yerusha. Vim Lav Noitlan Mishom Matana. And if it's not a Yerush, he takes it off Matana. What's so special about that? What new halacha do we learn from here? That's not the same thing as Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka. So that will come out in a minute. Omar Lei, Rav Huna said, you're right. In Hachi Kamina, this is really what I meant to say. Frak the Gemara, okay, so what special halacha other than Rabbi Yochanan ben Berka is he trying to express? Lamai Hilchasa. So Sober Rav Adabar Abba Kameda Rav Lamemar, Rav Adabar wanted to suggest that im Royal Yarshay, if it's B'Torah Yerusha, Alman Nasa Nizanis Minachasa. We know the halach is when the alman is collecting your ksuba, she will collect even from the chasa mishubat. But if we're not talking about her collecting the ksuba until she gets her payout, she's entitled to be supported from the estate. There, the halach is she could only take from the estate if it's not sold, if it's not transferred to a third party, only if it's right there. So if it's B'Torah Yerusha, well, then we'll say it's right there, and therefore she will, just as she's entitled to take Mazonis from any Yerush, she could take Yerusha from the Yerush as well. She could take Yerusha she could take her Mazonis from the Yerush if it went with Torah Yerusha. But Vimlav, if it's a matana that was given to a third party who's not a Yerush, that means in the estate, this no longer exists. If it's by the Yerush, then it's still in the estate. She can cut Mazonis from it. But if it was given to a third party who's not a Yerush, it is no longer in the estate. And then Ein Almanos and Mazonis Menachos. So maybe that was the focus of the halacha. He was asked, this happened. Can the Almana get Mazonis from this estate? Yes or no? That's already nothing to do with Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. Yes, Agaborcha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka is invoked, but that wasn't the point of his halacha. And therefore, he didn't have to say halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, because that wouldn't bring out the halacha that he wanted to express. Amalei Rava, how could you say that? Migra Gora, it's worse. Hashdo b'Yerusha d'Oraisa, Amrit Almanos and Nizonis Menachos. If it transfers over to a Yerush, where according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, it's a d'Oraisa transmission, and it's his in Gansen. Nevertheless, you say it's still considered part of the estate, and she gets to collect mazonis from it. B'matana, if he gives it away, to somebody who wasn't the Yerush, dirabanan. But there's no such kinyan of a shchivra saying something. It's merely a takana dirabanan that we give it to the person that the mitzvah wanted to give it to, so he shouldn't get distressed. But the whole kinyan is only dirabanan. So the whole kinyan is only dirabanan. Should that take away from her right to collect him mazonis? Loy kol shekain? Of course, she should still be able to collect from mazonis from a third party. So this is a great trivia question. When is it possible for an almana to collect mazonis even though it's not in the estate? Teretz is if it was given away with a kinyan derabanan, such as a matna shchivim. So once again, what is the impact? What halacha was Rav Huna trying to transmit when he said in royal yarsha it's Yerusha, and if not it's a matna shchivim? Right? What is the impact? Amarava kidushalach of Achav barav Avia as follows. According to Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, if someone says nechasai lach, I'm giving my nechasim to you, and you didn't specify how it should transfer. Should it transfer b'teres Yerusha or should it transfer b'teres matana? But then you said the acharecha, and after you die, liploini, I want it to go to somebody else. So then the halach is im ha Yerisha royal yarshai. If the first person gets it like Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka's mechanism, it goes within Yerusha. It's midaraisa his as a Yerush. Then it's the end of the line. After someone yarshin something, we learned you can't give it away. If you gave it him to yarshin, you can no longer dictate who he's going to give it to after he dies. It's going to go to his children, and therefore ein l'sheni b'makam rishon klum she'ein lashon matana nechasai leploini. Even though it doesn't specify how it should be given to him, we already said that if it could go b'Yerusha, that's the chiddush of Rav Huna. Since it could go b'Yerusha, we'll say it will invoke the mechanism of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, and it'll be a Yerusha. In Lashon Matana, ala Lashon Yerusha. And we know b'Yerusha in lahefseh. Once someone is Yerush something, the Moirish has zero control over it to further divert it. And therefore, that will be the nafkamina. If this person said nechasi laploini, and the ploini was a Yerush, then he cannot say v'acharecha laploini. But if he did it b'teres matana, then it could go. Then he could do it. How that would work is a whole different shaila. Amalei Rava of Nachman, I don't understand. How could you tell me the Yerusha doesn't stop and it doesn't transfer to the Sheni? That's what he said. He said I wanted to go v'acharecha l'sheni. So he might have said that. Who saw bar yesh lahevsik? He might have thought that he could do it. But the Torah says it doesn't work. So too bad for him. So the Rashbam summarizes. Correct. So the Rashbam summarizes this whole sugya over here. So let's start from where it says v'hashto shma'inan in the Rashbam, and this is where he summarizes our sugya. V'hashto shma'inan mahacha. The shchiv mera hakoshev kol nechasav oy mechalek lebonov, a shchiv mera who is giving out all his nechasim bifnei ishtoi in front of his wife, and she does not protest, which is how Shmuel learned Rabbi Yosy, how Rabbi Nachman learned like Shmuel the shita of Rabbi Yosy, that holds that even though she's not specifically or explicitly being moida and moichel the shibud, the mere fact that she witnessed this and didn't protest, the gam noson lakaka kol shehu. It also only works if she also got something of karka, vishoska, and she was silent v'loy irara, and she didn't protest. That's one way. Or v'wadinim kosav kol nechasav lacherim b'foneh v'lo kosav karka kol shehu. Or if he wrote, instead of telling, he wrote it to them, Kanu, they're al koina, and she's moichel shibud. She can no longer collect from those other nechosim. Sharei machla lahen shibuda, and therefore veloy sitroif mahen. She no longer has a right to be typhus what they received to pay off her to. Kirav Nachman, that's exactly how we learned yesterday according to Rav Nachman. The Amar Hoyel v'Asa Shutaf Bein Abanim of the Ksubasa. Since she now becomes a Shutaf amongst the Banim because she also got a part, no matter how small a part she received, she is now a Shutaf, and therefore she is being Moichel the Shibud. The Ba'asa Shutaf told you Milsa, Loishna Imbana v'Loishna Macherim. It doesn't even matter who the other recipients are. Once she has a chelik and she doesn't protest that the rest was given to a third party, she can no longer collect her shibud ksuba from those nechas. But the hanamili kishachala kol nechasav lishtali arsha. There's zero left in the estate. Aval shayir afilu dekel echad, which like we learned on top of Amar Aleph today. The hainu karka kolshu shaloi pirish lami, who he didn't distribute. Migu the hadra adikla hadra v'nachta lemikvi mikol nechsi. Since that the shibud remains on that dekel, Huadin, the shibud will remain on all of the nechasim that he distributed. It doesn't show, the fact that she was quiet does not show that she gave up any rights. But v'dafka b'shekos la karka kolshu, that's only if the little piece that she received was karka. Avalim nasan metaltlin, the loy karka, but if she was only given metaltlin, like if you remember on Roman base, she just was left over pears from the field. If it was a pears is metaltlin, that doesn't prove anything. There, like mikri should have been abundant, but like machla midi, she was mechal nothing. The nachsa kul nixi, now she can still go and collect from all of these assets that were given to whoever they were given to, because the shibud ksuba, which precedes that matana, trumps it all. Trump intended, pun intended. Today's a day. Today's a lashon Trump. Kid Omar of Nachman metaltli loy kamina. Mahanamili. The of the ksubasa is mehanin nixi to cost of labana. When we say she loses her ksuba, it doesn't mean she loses her ksuba. She just loses the shibud on those specific set of assets. Aval yihada basar hachi the kani nixachvi. Let's say after this occasion, the husband acquires more nechasim. Va'afilu mehanin nixi atzman shachalav labana. Even if he repossesses something that he already gave away in this distribution. For instance, if Rahman one of his children die in his lifetime, so now the distribution that he gave that son will now come back to him, then that now becomes an asset that she could collect from. Because in the Ksuba he wrote, not only am I mishabed my current nechasim to your Ksuba, but any nechasim that I buy in the future, the shibud ksuba will be chal upon as well. But v'davka shchiv mera kedam in lil. Of course, this only applies to shchiv mera. Aval bori shechalak nechas of levana because of gam lo karka kolshu. That was a shaila that the Gemara never was poishit. But he boiled the rava imachla lahu shibuda shall oisa nechasim imlav, because maybe she doesn't have to protest because she assumes that he'll buy more things because he's still healthy and he'll still buy more assets. We'll keep him to take the Gemara. Remained with the teku. The hilchach given the masab kalam. Since it's a teku, amrina na moitzi mechaveroi. Who's the moitzi mechaveroi? Who wants to collect? The hanu isha. I'll be right. She would have to prove, in fact, that she was not moichelit. The called in teku man the toughest. And right now the assets are in the rishus of her children or in whoever else it was distributed to, and therefore she cannot collect from it. Umiui hadar kani is like if he goes and buys back those nechasim or any other nechasim, avada the ksuba remains in force. The shibud ksuba remains in force on all those nechasim. Okay, Gavaldik. So let's get back to over here. So he might have wanted to give it to Yerusha to A, and then after A dies, it should go to B. That might have been his intent. But for Rachmana Amar Ein Lahefsek, the Torah says, unfortunately, what you intended to do does not work. Rachmana Amar Ein Lahefsek, looking at the bottom line of the Rishbam. Like Mati mentioned, you cannot be masna mashakos of the Torah. You cannot put a t'nai in Yerusha that the Torah dictates. His maisa of saying that the Yerusha should go to the Ploni is chal, and the extra that he added v'acharecha lePloni, that's not chal. That's t'nai batal. V'hani hilchasa v'hachi hilchasa ki d'shalach rabacha the chazina of the besamach kavaseh. The halacha is like this because on Amud Beis we're going to see a story occurred just like this, and the psak halacha lemaisa was that the Yerusha holds and it does not go to the Viacha. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter on Kuf Lam Gimel Amud Beis. Hahu the Omar Leila Chavre. Someone told his friend, and the Rashbam says it's clearly this friend was a friend who was royal Yarshay, maybe it was his son. And he said, Nechasai Lach, V'acharecha L'ploy. For Rishon royal Yarshay, the person who he gave it to was royal Yarshanim. So it works with Torah Yerusha using the mechanism of Rabbi Yochanan ben Bereika. V'haya b'yoyman chilo esbana. He can be matchel to whoever he wants. Then Avashach of Rishon, the first person died. Also Sheni, now the second guy says, I'm next in line, V'acharecha to me, right? Katova. So Savar Rab Elish Kamei de Rav Meimar Sheni Nami Shop. Rav Elish mistakenly thought that he said Acharecha L'Ploini. So now we'll take it away from the children of the Rishon, and rather we'll divert it to the Sheni as per the instructions of the Mitzvah. Amar Lei, they told him Dayoni de Chatzatzta Hachidani. You know what type of Dayanim paskin such a perverted halacha? Dayoni de Chatzatzta. What is the Dayoni de Chatzatzta? Either is the Yoni Pshara. What Dayanim always demand the Pshara of the two Baladin? Dayanim she'ein bekin bedin, and therefore v'choyt in mechzel azeh u'mechzel azeh in the moment of b'satan. It's good to know here Baldin, and they try to pull a Pshara on you. You say what? Dayanim de Chatzatzta. You're Dayanim de Chatzatzta. Then you get thrown out of business. Rabbeinu Chananel Pirish Chatzatzta basic forest. You're Dayanim of the basic forest. In other words, you're very not good Dayanim. I suspect that if you told this to a dayan, you would not gain favor in their eyes. They said, you know why you're wrong? Because we just discussed this halacha. Lav hainu, the shalach Rab Acha by Rab Abya, that once you give it to Yerusha, you can no longer dictate who to go to after you, because it's masna masha kosa b'tayra. So Rab Elish realized that he was wrong and he made a very big mistake. Ichsiv, he was devastated. And not only was he devastated, he said, now you probably think, Rava, that all my Piskei Halacha are wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about. So Rava said, don't worry. I know that you never made a mistake. Rather, Kari Allah, Ani Hashem be'ita achishena. We use be'ita achishena to talk about when the Geula is going to come. But be'ita achishena means HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me to be in the right place at the right time to save you from making the mistake. But Avada, you surely didn't make any mistake anywhere else. I guess in those days they were much tougher. They must be much tougher than we were. So, Ichziv, Rav Elish Rava, they were not snowflakes in those days. If you wanted to be in the big, if you wanted to get into the Gemara, you had to have to handle the bumps and the grinds. I don't know. Ichziv Rav Elish Rava, Pen Yoimer Rava Beliba, he's nervous. Maybe Rava's thinking to himself, Ilu Loya Yisi Bekan, are you done in checker? If it wasn't for Rava catching this, Rav Elish would have passed it wrong, and he would draw another conclusion. V'chein kol dinin so done shlo b'fanai. I mean, considering that you called me at the end of the Chatzatzta, I have a right to be paranoid that maybe you don't think that my Piskei Halacha are legitimate. So Rava said, don't worry, Mantayaki. Karel of Rava l'nachama, don't worry. Ani Hashem bitach yishena, meaning be'esh that tzadikim, tzrichin Yeshua, whenever a tzaddik needs a Yeshua, for instance, he's about to give out a wrong psak and he needs a backstop. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamtzil lehem. Hashem provides them a backstop to protect them from a mistake. Afata, so you. Ani idea book. I know that everything you paskin was legitimate with Shata D'Shmaya. How do I know it? Because the one time that you were going to say something that maybe was not right, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me into the right place at the right time. So for Karen, the fact that this happened means you're safe, because if it happened to you today, that I was here to be your backstop, clearly HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to always make sure that your Piskei Halacha will be correct. That's called making lemons into lemonade. Did you ever hear of somebody who didn't like one of his children and cut him out of the will? You ever heard of such a situation? So now we're going to talk about if that's the right thing to do. HaKoshev, this is where Yerusha gets interesting. Hakosev es nechasav lacherim v'hiniches banav. Someone decided, I'm not going to give any Yerusha to my children. I'm diverting all my Yerusha to a third party. Masha asa asa. It works. He's able to do that. As the Rashbam says, of course he could. That's not the chiddush of our Mishnah. The whole reason why the Mishnah shares us this halacha is to tell you that it's a bad thing to do. The asher lasus king. So he ignored his children. That's not the way to do things. As the Rashbam says, they're not going to say, good for you. You taught them a lesson. They're going to say, you jerk. You shouldn't have done that. It's going to cause you a charoin af. Your children are going to be angry at you. They're not going to say kaddish for you. Why? Actually, I'm sorry, not the children. It means Chazal will be angry at you because you're being oikar nachal deraisa. Kadosh Baruch Hu set up how Hashem wants everything to succeed, and you're changing the path. They're not happy about it. But Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, im lo hayu banav nahagim kishura. If his children are not behaving properly, then zocher l'toiv. That's a good thing. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, b'gamar mafarish lo ila frushias or ila fruit. Is Rab Shimon ben Gamliel merely explaining the Chachamim? And of course, when the Chacham said, "And that's only if they're deserving of the Yerusha. But if not, then it's no problem to divert Yerusha. Or maybe no. Maybe the Tanakh says, no matter who they are and how bad they are, you're not allowed to divert Yerusha. You know, Shimon Gamliel argues and says, no, if they're bad, you're allowed to divert Yerusha. That is the shayla. Iboilu, me pligi rabbanon alej Shimon Gamliel, and they hold that no matter how bad the children are, you still have to leave them the Yerusha. Or maybe they agree. Tashma, with a very interesting story. It's a story with a twist inside a twist. The Yosy ben Yozer, Hayaloi ben Shaloy. He had the Rachmana litzlan a child that was not behaving properly. Havaloi Elisa the Dingri, and Elisa literally means an attic full of dinarim. But Tosha says it's lavdavka means he had a basket full of dinarim. So he had a nice fat estate. And what he did is that he didn't want his son to get it because his son didn't behave properly. Kom aktisha. He was makdish the whole thing. His son was probably delighted. So what did his son do? Ozel nosiv bas gadol klili the yanei malka. This son ended up marrying the daughter of the man who was responsible for being mikaleya atoris the yanei melech. He would braid or weave the beautiful atoros made out of gold and silver and jewels that Yanei HaMelech used to have. So clearly he was in a very high position. He made a lot of money. He married a very, very wealthy girl. Elida Devisu, and his wife gave birth. Zav-in-law, you know what he bought her? If you try this, you are going to get thrown out of the house. Zav-in-law Benisa, he bought her a dead fish. But the Rashbam says, of course, Ayeledis needs food. So he took care of her. He bought her a dead fish. Kara, they cut open the fish. Ashkech bo margalisa, and they found a Yosef Moker Shabbos. They found a gem in the fish. That never happened to me. Ashkech bo margalisa. Omrele, so she told him, Loisim taya lemalka, don't take this to the king, because who is the most common buyer of gems and jewels? The king. Don't bring it to them that they should buy it from you. You know why? The shakli lach minach, the shakla minach bedami kalili. They're going to rip you off. They're going to offer you much less than it's worth. You know who's going to give you an honest assessment of what this jewel is worth? Zilam taya legabi gizbarim. Sell it to the Beis Hamikdash. The gizbarim, they are very accurate in their assessments. And as the Rashbam says, why would the Beis Hamikdash need precious stones? This might be an appropriate stone for the ephod. Dr. Rashbam, there was no more Urim V'Tumim. Why would they need Avnei ephod? The need of Batli Urim V'Tumim Lishalba, and you couldn't ask questions anymore. Someone saying until we get the Urim V'Tumim, wait. That means basically wait until Mashiach comes. Nevertheless, ephod v'choshen mi'alei batli. they still had Eifed and Choshen at this period in time. The Ein Kohen Gadol Mashamish Below Shemayin Begadol. So maybe it's best if you sell it to the gizmo. But don't go to the gizmo and say, I think this is worth $10,000. What do you think it's worth? You can't say that. Because let's say it's worth $20,000. Let's say you're wrong. And you just threw out a number of 10,000 that you're willing to sell it for. The moment those words come out of your mouth, now you're mechuyev to sell it to Hektish for that amount because let the guy speak first. That's mamish what it is. You keep your mouth shut and wait until the gizbar tells you what it's worth. Look at the Rashbam. Don't make an offer. You never make the original opening offer, as Dubi says. Even the Shaimis law, if you undervalue it, you will not be able to take more because it's perceived by the Hektish, by the Rebbeinu Shalom, as an Amirasa L'Gvaya, which now binds you. Amirasa L'Gvaya. Okay, so Ayvazoi, don't say anything, let them say it. So what happened? Shamu, Amtaya, he took it to the Gizbar. Shamua, it was assessed betleser aliyasa the din. It was worth 13 baskets of dinar. So it was worth a fortune. But the Gizbar said, unfortunately, Hektish does not have enough money in its coffers to pay for this gem. Sheva Ika. Hektish has 7. Just leka. But we need to do a VTB on 6 of the dinar. Omar Lahu, or we do a layaway. I think it's called a layaway plan, right? Omar Lahu, so you know what he said? Not a problem. Sheva Habuli, I'll accept as payment 7 baskets of dinarim. She's the other 6, Harayhen Muktoshas L'Shamayim. So this son ended up being a pretty good guy, right? He turned out pretty good at that. So Amdu v'Kasvu, so yesterday the Adam got up and wrote down to record this. Yosef ben Yoyezer Hichnes Achas. He only gave 1 basket of golden coins to the base of Mikdash. That the basket that he didn't want his son to get. Ubenoi, but his son did much better. Hichnis sheish. So based on this nusach, it sounds very much like everything is good over here. Because it's praising the situation. So it must be Yosef did a good job. He gave 1, and that taught his son a lesson, and the son was machshel toiv, and look what happened out of it. He ended up giving more money to tzedakah. What? From the fish.
No, you're getting that basket.
Yeah, well, you didn't get from the spot, I got from the Rosh. Right, okay. The Ikad Amri, there's another nusach as to how it happened. Yosef ben Yezer hichnis achas uvenoi hoitzi sheva. What they said was, Yosef was such a tzaddik, he gave it to tzedakah. And what did his son do? His son was such a chazer, he extracted 7 baskets of gold coins from the base of Mikdash. The same action, depending on what your perspective is. Oh, look how generous he gave 6, or what a low life he took 7, right? Midika Hichnis. Now we're focusing on the first losh. Midika Hichnis, Michal the shopper of it. It seems that this was a positive story, and Rabbi Yossi ben Yehoshua did the right thing by cutting his son out of the will. Zoktamar, look at the Sefer, Hadirabba. Midika Amri Hoitzi. Our shaila as to whether or not it's the right thing to do to deny your child or Yerusha if he doesn't behave properly. From this story of Yosef and Yezer, we're not going to get any resolution. So my Havala, let's see if there was another place to bring a raya from. Tashma, the Amr Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda, Shin a sharp one. Loi sahave bei avurei achsanta. Don't be from the people. Don't hang out in the place of people who divert Yerusha from its proper place. Even if you're taking it away from a bad son to give it to a good son, you shouldn't do that. And surely you shouldn't take it away from a bad son to give to a daughter. So here it's pretty clear that it's not a good thing to do, even if the son is bad. So now we have a raya that the Tanakama is arguing on Shimon Gamliel. Because Shmuel wouldn't say it's a bad thing to do if there was no Tana that agreed to that. So it must be that Shmuel paskins like the Tana that held the Tanakam of our Mishnah knows even if your child is not bathing appropriately, he should still get Yerusha. Tanu Rabbanan. Ma'aseh b'adam echad, and this is a very fascinating story. Ma'aseh b'adam echad, shaloi hayu banav nehagim kishu. His children were not behaving properly. Omad v'kasav nechasav liyonis and benuzil. He wrote in his will that I want all my nechasim to go to Yonis and benuzil, who wasn't a relative. I wanted to give it to this. Can you imagine a guy says, I'm making to Bava. Back kids are getting it, right? Ma also Yonis ben Ezil. Yonis ben Ezil felt that this guy didn't do the right thing. He completely cut his kids out of the will. So you know what he did? Mochar shlish. He sold a third, and now he has money for himself, which he's entitled to. It was given to him. The hikdish shlish. He gave a third to hekdish, and the final third, the hichsil shlish, and he gave a third back to the kids. Let him have something too. Shammai came screaming, which means he's coming to challenge Yonis ben Ezil. Shammai told, so Yonis ben Ezil, seeing that Shammai was going to attack him, Yonis ben Ezil preempted Shammai and told him as follows: if you can say that what I sold is not legit, and you're going to take it away from the buyer. What I was makdish is not legit because I had the right to do that, and you could take it away from hekdish. Then you could force me to also take back what I gave to the child, because clearly the Noisin didn't want to go to the trial. If he would have wanted to go to the child, he would have given it to the child. He gave it to Yosy ben Ezil, so it should have gone to the child. So you want to say that since I gave it to the child, my whole receipt is not legit and it's bottle. That's not true, because you're not going to be mavatal the hekdish. You're not going to take it back. You only want what the kids have back. Can't do that. It's all or nothing. In other words, if there was a t'nai in the nesina to me, maybe you'd have something to claim, and everything is bottle. There was no t'nai. He gave it to me fair and square, to mine fair and square, and I'm allowed to give it to the kids back fair and square. Zok to Gemara, im lav. And if you can't take it away from hektish, and you wouldn't dare reverse the hektish, then so Shammai told him, Amar hitiach alai ben Uziel. You got me. Hitiach alai ben Uziel. So the question is, Beis Shammai didn't even open his mouth, and we had a whole havamin and maskon over here. So what was Shammai? What was his initial argument? What did he think originally had happened? And how did he suddenly change everything around? So that is the shayla. Let's save this for tomorrow, because I have to learn this Tosfos. I cannot learn this Tosfos. So Rabbi Yonis ben Ezil is saying a funny story about some guy who didn't like his son and gave the Yerusha to Yonis ben Ezil. That's almost how liberals work. It's called projectionism. You ever heard of the word projectionism? Whatever they accuse the Republicans of doing is really what they're doing themselves. So let's just have a look at this Tosfos. I can't control myself. We have to see the Tosfos. Near the Rashba, the Hu Gavra, the cause of Nechasav Yonis ben Ezil, he there in the cause of Mibanoi. He didn't just give it away. He actually made a neder to answer his children to have any enough from his Nechasav b'chayiv uvemoisa. So there's more to the story. He was actually forbade his son, and that's again because really to finish up the Gemara compares it to a case where someone did just that. He answered somebody with a no. But Yosavar Shammai shenasan lehainasan almanah sheyitin levana. Shammai actually thought that since he answered, he wanted to use it as a loophole. Adarab, he wanted to use it as a loophole to get it back to his children because he felt bad that he answered his kids having a no. So he figured if he goes through Yonis, then it'll be a legitimate nesina and they'll be able to get it. But Yosavar sheichser akoil, and this he was actually thinking forget. He wanted to give it all back. He wanted Yonis ben Ezil to give it all back, not just some of it back. So that's why he was angry. Why? Because since you didn't do what you're supposed to do, your whole matan is bought. The base that we're going to learn on Amud Aleph. The case over there is the son answered his father from having Elianah from him. Then the son made a chasana, and he wanted his father to attend the chasana. So he gifted everything that he owned to a friend, and he said, "You know why I'm gifting it to you? Because I want my father to come to the wedding. My father's allowed to have enough from you. He's not allowed to have enough from me." And then the friend pulled the shtickle. The friend was makdish the whole thing. So the guy said, "You can't do that. I only gave it to you to avoid the problem." So that was a discussion over there. So The Heishiv lo Yonason, and Yonason answered, Einoi kamoy shat the suffer. You can't compare this case to that case. The husband lo Heishiv matana gemura. It wasn't a matana gemura because when the guy gave it to him, he said, I'm only giving it to you to get around the problem of Isra. No. But in this case, it was given to Yonason and Zuyo fair and square without any conditions. Avozu matana gemura limkor la. The Chemash Rabbi Yushalmi ben Adorim. The Ka'amar. Yonason ben Uziel, he dira other ben Chosov. It was Yonason himself. He was the guy who the father wanted to cut him out of the will. It's Yonason ben Uziel. The story didn't really happen that it was given to Yonason ben Uziel. He was the son who his father wanted to cut him out of the will. The Yonason ben Uziel, he dira other ben Chosov. I mean, Uziel didn't want Yonason to get anything. Amad v'kosvei l'shamai. So the father of Yonason ben Uziel wrote over all of his nechasim to Shammai. Ma'os Shammai. What did Shammai do to help Yonason ben Uziel? Mochar miksasam, the hikdish miksasam, but nosan loyni give back to Yonason as a shar. Amar, he said, Kol mishi yoboy v'ya'ar al maton azoit. Anyone who's going to say that I didn't have the right legitimately to give it to Yonason ben Uziel, Yosy min alakuch hektish. First go to hektish and get it back. If they give it back, then I'll give it back. The Achach Yosy miyadzeh. The Shem is Amaisa Atzmoi Hoya by Yushami Mahapachla. Could be this was the real story, but the way the Gemara gives it over to make it look better is as if he was the third party. So I have to know. I'm just Tosus, so that's why I have to learn it. Then we'll finish the Gemara at Shem tomorrow. It's mamish what's projected.